Hello, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. Every single day here at TechLinks, we take a bit over 100 phone calls in our tech support group and provide quality service to the users who are calling in with questions. And often those questions are answered with recommendations on how to design better, print better, secure better, or ultimately manage your labels better. So knowing that, we put together this 4-part webinar series, Design, Print, Secure, and Manage Your Labels Better, to proactively share some of this information with our customer base. So thank you for joining today for the first of the 4-part series for today's webinar, Design Labels Better. Before we get into the agenda, I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Nick Recht. I currently wear the hat of the Enterprise Product Manager here at TechLinks. I've been in this role for roughly 6 years, and I've been with TechLinks as a whole for a bit over 10 years at this point. I love my job. I hope you can tell that based on the interaction you're going to have with me today and any of the previous interactions you may have had with me. And I think the reason I love it the most is because I get to execute my passion every single day here. And that passion being helping companies use software to add value to their business. And ultimately, that is what you're doing with a barcoding and label design solution. And I want to help you ensure that you're doing that in the most optimal fashion available. On a more personal note, I'm a family man. I have 3 daughters and a wife. And for that reason, I make beer at home. I make quite a bit of beer, about 15 gallons at a time. That's equivalent to a half barrel. So not only does my family love me, but my neighbors also love me because I make too much beer to responsibly consume by myself. I also like to smoke meat. So ribs, brisket, pork shoulder, whatever it may be, I like to throw it on my smoker, and it gives me a great excuse to drink the beer that I've made. On a side note, but far more exciting, I want to give a shout out to the Milwaukee Brewers for locking in their spot last night. They're currently playing right now, and I made a promise to the marketing group that I would not be checking the score during the webinar. So feel free to chat that in the question pane if you want, because I'll be itching to know as we move through this. So today we plan on covering a few things. Before we change this slide, I'm going to briefly recap a couple of housekeeping items. Then we're going to spend a minute or two talking about how most of our users are designing labels today. And unfortunately, most of the time it's not done in the most optimal fashion. Fortunately for everybody in attendance, we're going to share some of the strategies today that can help get you there. We are then going to discuss 6 ways to design your labels better. From there, we're going to jump into a demonstration. The demonstration will take a majority of our time together today, as I find that to be the best way to share this information. We're then going to briefly talk about a customer use case that directly applies to designing labels better. And then we're going to wrap things up with the Q&A session. So housekeeping items. First and foremost, Q&A. There's a question pane here. Feel free to type in your question as soon as it pops into your head. We will have some of the other organizers firing off the answers to them as quick as they possibly can, but I will leverage those in the Q&A session to have the discussion around those questions. There is also a chat window. The chat window is a little bit one-way, as you can't chat back or chat amongst the group, but we are going to be leveraging that chat window to share with you a bunch of really great educational material and information throughout the webinar today. There's also a polling question. So when we leave the live demonstration, we will launch a poll. It'll be relatively self-explanatory how to answer. Your screen will share the options for the answer to the question. I will read the question a few times over and over, and please participate with your answer. We will share the results, but we will not share who said what. So it is anonymous in that fashion. And then last, but certainly not least, there will be a survey at the end of the webinar. Please fill that out for a few different reasons. One, I'd like to know how I've done today and how TechLinks has done. and you can share any ideas for future topics. It's also a great forum to let us know how you would like to be followed up with, whether it is on the technical side or on the sales side, so on and so forth. It'll make our feedback and response to you a little bit more educated. So without further ado, let's talk about how many of our users are designing their labels using Label Matrix, Label View, and CODESOFT today. So by far, the most common scenario for users designing labels with our product today starts with them plugging in the printer to the workstation. Often based on plugging that printer in, it'll install a generic Windows-based driver for you, or you'll start by going through Windows to install a printer driver, maybe having to download it from a website or find it from a third party or install it from a disk or a thumb drive or something. Then you print a test page to that printer to make sure you can communicate to it. From there, you click and drag fixed information, whether it's images, text fields, or barcodes, onto the label. And then at print time, you either modify that design over and over and over, or key in data, select your printer, and print. And more often than not, that is really the exact use case of how many of our clients designing labels with our product use the product every single day. So the 6 ways we want to demonstrate for you to design labels better go as followed. First, we recommend setting up the printer in an optimal fashion and leveraging the printer resident features of that. And this whole topic is really about using our embedded TechLinks printer drivers, and I'll really start by showing you how easy it is to set up and then some of the hidden benefits you get of leveraging our embedded TechLinks printer driver. We are then going to jump into the wizards, and we'll discuss the label samples, but we'll actually show off some label samples in a future bullet. But the wizards are available within our product in almost every aspect of it. We're going to demonstrate the wizard for creating a GS1 compliant barcode, and then later when we talk about variable data, we'll leverage a wizard one more time to create and use a database connection. From there, we're going to jump into some very, very specific design features around creating smart label templates with variable data. Now we're going to cover 2 aspects of variable data and mention a third one. The 2 aspects are leveraging a database connection and using input masks or filters to do data integrity validation upon the data that your users may need to key in at the time of print. And I'm going to briefly talk about counters and serialization because that is often very important to our clients and something that we do a really great job at. We're then going to show off a couple of the label samples that have integrated advanced custom forms in them. I'm going to show you how to get there, and it'll be a feature that you can play with if you have Label View or CODESOFT 2019, and you can certainly leverage our top-notch tech support team that answers every single phone call live to walk you through it further if you have any questions after you've touched it. We are then going to highlight the use of color on labels. We're not going to get too in-depth into it, but we are going to show it off as it's certainly something that is growing in popularity very, very rapid and can add a lot of business value, both on the marketing side, respecting the logos and the color schemes of the labels you're printing with your TechLinks product, but also on the organization side. It's a lot easier to color code inventory than it is to simply have the barcode, especially if people are making decisions based on looking at it. And then we're going to briefly discuss a couple of ways to stay current on your software version, because as mentioned with like the integrated forms, we're always advancing and moving our product forward, and we certainly want you to be able to take advantage of the most current software features. So without further ado, let's jump into our product today. So today's demonstration is going to be done within our CODESOFT product. Many of the features that we talk about are available in Label View as well, and a flavor of everything we talk about is available in Label Matrix, Label View, and CODESOFT. So first things first, I want to talk about leveraging the use of our embedded printer drivers. So first and foremost, they are far easier to install than the Windows-based printer drivers. So within your product, if you simply go to File and select Printer, it'll show you a list of the available printers, and adding a new one is really just a couple of clicks away. You simply say Add. Today, we'll add a zebra, because we know many of our clients are using zebras. You scroll through the list. You could narrow this list even further by typing in the exact model. You pick the printer from the list, pick the port in which it is attached to on your station, and simply click OK. From there, you've added your TechLink's embedded printer driver. No need to search for it on the network or download anything. It's really just easy as selecting it and selecting the port. After that printer is selected, you can start to leverage the printer resident features of that printer, like the printer resident fonts that are available. So you see here, the first options in the list are the printer resident fonts, and then you get to all the graphic fonts. The printer will certainly support both types. It's just you get an optimized communication and a faster print when leveraging those printer resident fonts. Not only can you leverage printer resident fonts, but you can leverage printer resident barcodes as well. Barcodes, just the sheer nature and the size of them, when you leverage them as graphic, are larger and more data to send. So when you can leverage a printer resident barcode on your printer, you're really optimizing that communication. And if you're doing anything along the lines of like serialization in either a text field or a barcode, leveraging the printer resident font is going to be what makes you print 100 labels with no delay between each one, rather than 100 labels with a gap between each one. A lot of the tech support guys here poke fun at me because I'm using sound effects to describe that, right? Instead of voot, 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 you're getting your printout as voot of the whole 100 labels. And then last but certainly not least, on the topic of leveraging printer resident barcodes and fonts, is the ability to leverage very specific barcode features. So in any object you've added to your label, you have this specific options. It'll be different based on your printer model, but it's our way at TechLinks of being able to really exploit the features of that printer on specific objects on the label. So our embedded printer driver is not only easier to install, faster to install, easier to maintain, but they also really let you exploit the features of that device you acquired. So the next thing I want to talk about is our wizards. And the wizards really span every portion of our product, from the new label document wizard to the wizard you get when you add a new text field, a new barcode, or a new image. It's really our goal here to make our product as easy to use as possible for you, and the wizards are one of the ways in which we do that. The wizard I want to highlight the most is the one that the feedback has suggested adds the most value, and it's our GS1 barcode creation wizard. As I explained to a lot of the new people I hire, you're a pretty unique individual if you're designing barcode labels for fun. More often than not, the point of acquiring a barcode label design solution is to, one, meet a regulation, or two, to add some beautification or replace what you used to be doing with a Sharpie marker. But the most common way is meeting the regulations, and the most common regulation would be leveraging a GS1 compliant barcode to be able to ship to a certain business, or to be able to work with a certain off-the-shelf business system within your four walls. And we make it so you can design that GS1 barcode without being an expert at all. So after you launch the GS1 barcode wizard, you can pick the symbology you'd like, whether it's the 128 or the data matrix, the two most common, or any of the other that you might need to use. And then you can simply pick the application identifiers you'd like to add to that barcode. So if we go ahead and add a make-believe GTIN here, we can see that it allows us to do it. And then if we go ahead and we can add additional fields as well. So if we wanted to add a batch or a lot number, and in this case we wanted to make it variable, we can even launch a new data source wizard from within this wizard, really making the whole creation of a compliant GS1 barcode that much easier for you. Last thing you want to do is spend the time to create a barcode that isn't necessarily going to meet the requirements of the regulation in which you're trying to meet. So now we've covered 2 of the 6 topics we wanted to introduce. We added the printer, and then we also added the GS1 compliant barcode. Notice that it defaulted to the printer resident barcode here via the wizard, because we push our product to make sure it's helping you leverage those features in the most optimal way possible. So the next topic is one that I think is really, really important, and it's to be bundled up in the topic of smart labels, but we really want to briefly cover 3 things. Leveraging a database connection on your label or a table lookup, leveraging a data integrity check upon entering data at the time of print, and then I briefly want to mention counters, as I know serialization is an important topic. So say I ran a business where I made 20 different products. More likely than not, my initial instinct would be to create a label for every one of those products, not knowing that I can create one label template that would drive variable data onto that label from an external data source. And connecting to that data source is very, very easy with our product. So if we go ahead and launch our database connection query definition file here, I can pick an existing one, or I can leverage a wizard to drive a connection to a new data source. Whether that data source is Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, or a less popular database type that I need to connect to with an OLE or an ODB data source, I can simply select that data source, name that data source. So in this case, I'm connecting to one of the TechLink sample databases that contains a list of different fruits for us. As I noticed quite a few food manufacturers on the webinar today. Thought this might hit close to home for you. From here, I simply browse for my sample database. Today, the sample database we're going to use is one that comes with our product here. So if I browse to our sample data sources, I can pick our fruits database. If I had a name and a password on my Access database, I'd be able to specify that here in my connection. I can test it to make sure that I'm going to drive the information appropriately. And then from here, go ahead and select Finish, and then that becomes a selectable option for me to drive variable data to my label. And after I have done that, it's really as easy as clicking and dragging this information onto the label and specifying whether I want it to display as text or as a barcode or even a variable image. So we'll go ahead and put the English name, the French name, and then we'll go ahead and put the Chinese character as well. The Chinese characters, I'll have to change the font to be a graphical font that will support those, as they are not necessarily available in the printer resident font there. But now, with simply creating that database connection, I have created one label that can represent all the different products in which I might need to print. We can leverage a very similar setup to do a table lookup, where we can give it key field access to it. So rather than scrolling through the label or picking the record from the database when I want to print, I can simply maybe scan and print the SKU or the product number to print this label, which we'll cover a bit more in depth in next week's webinar, Print Better. Now, on the topic of smart labels, I also like to mention the data integrity check. So say, for example, I needed to enter a 7-digit lot number at the time of print. I can leverage an input mask to say, make the minimum length 7 and make it so it only accepts numbers. And if you have any questions on how to leverage the features in the input mask, the output mask, or making a user interfield counter, I recommend taking a look at our help file here, as it outlines all the specific things you can do. So if you want to force numbers, use a number sign, force alpha characters, use this. We certainly try to make our help file helpful, which is not always the case with all the products in which you might use within your business. So now when I go to print this label, because I leveraged best design practices, it doesn't let me type in letters, and it won't let me trigger the print until I've entered 7 numeric digits, just a way to make the design a little bit smarter to influence that printing process. And then, as mentioned, I want to talk about counters here. Counters are a great way to introduce unique serialization on your label, and just like with the theme here, you can leverage a wizard to create that serialization for you. So in an effort to respect everybody's time here, I'm going to move on to the next topic, even though we could spend a little more time on smart labels. But if you keep an eye on the chat window, we've chatted out a few things throughout, and we will continue, that can really touch on the topic of how to help you design better labels, print better labels, so on and so forth. So the next thing I want to do is pop open 2 of our sample labels. And the 2 sample labels I want to talk about are ones that will allow me to show our audience today some of the features of a new to 2019 feature of Label View and CODESOFT with our integrated form editor here. So I'm going to open the energy label, and I'm going to open our blood bag label here. And both of these labels have forms associated with them. So the traditional form, which I'll show here, simply shows all of your user-entered fields in a list. Our new form editor allows us to incorporate pick lists that the actions you make on the pick list will directly affect what's happening on the label. So you can see as I slide my spin speed here, it influences the label. As I pick different values, it picks the picker here. And then if we look at the blood bag form, we can leverage radio buttons and the calendar picker as well. These options are available simply by going to the form settings of your when printed field and changing the default value from automatic to custom, and then right-clicking on that form to launch our integrated form editor. So we have a whole webinar on this topic, so you can feel free to check that out as well. But it's a really great feature to help you design a printing process, not just a label. As you may have heard me say in the past, you design the label one time, but you potentially print it unlimited times. So the next topic I want to talk about is really the topic of leveraging color on your label. So on a label like this, you'll notice color is incorporated, and we can do exact color matches using RGB or CMYK, given the device in which you're printing to will support it. But I wanted to highlight one of the features that is really the most common way people are taking advantage of color printing with our software. So I'm certainly not suggesting that you want to use our software to like replace Adobe Illustrator, but you likely want to use our software to complement a product like Adobe Illustrator to pull in a high quality graphic image and then add a serialized barcode to it. So one of the very common use cases we see is somebody adding a fixed image to a label that would be something like a high quality color graphic here. Let me make it a little bigger so we can all see a little better. So you'd add this as essentially a background image, and then add a barcode in the form of a counter or something serialized over it. So you can really pull in and leverage our product to do our specialty on color printers, which is something we're seeing grow in popularity nowadays. So the The last thing I want to talk about, and I'll keep this brief, is really staying on the current version. So the topic of the integrated form is a feature that's only available in the 2019 version of LabelView and CODESOFT. So I recommend staying current in one way or another, and we offer a lot of good options to be able to do that, whether it's our maintenance agreement program on our traditional style licenses or our subscription license model. You can always stay current with no additional cost with TechLinks, given you're maintaining the maintenance agreement or have the subscription-based license. And if you're running an environment where you have many different seeds of CODESOFT, LabelView, or Label Matrix, I highly recommend taking advantage of our network-based license so that you have one license that manages your whole environment, so you don't end up with a 2019 version, 2020 version, 2021 version, and that way you also only have one maintenance contract on it. So as always, I've taken a little more time than I would have liked on the live demonstration. I hope you guys found it as useful as I anticipate you did, but I want to take a brief second here to launch a polling question. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys, based on the demonstration and what you've seen so far, which one of the features I showed off do you think would be the best fit to add value to your business? So the options are leveraging the barcode wizards and the sample label templates, or just our wizards in general, the topic of creating smart labels, the integrated forms, which is a really cool feature in my opinion, incorporating color on your labels, or just really the concept of staying current on your labels. So it's been open for 30 seconds, and I have about 15% of the audience who has voted. So if you're out there, please fill out your answer. We're already up over 50%, so I'll keep this open for about another 15 seconds, or until we hit an 80% vote rate. So okay, we're at 60%, and we have 10 more seconds. So read those. Which one of the features of the demonstration do you think will add the most value to your business? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, last chance, 2, 1. Perfect. So we got over 75% of the audience who has voted, which will give us a good representation of the registered and attending audience today. Let's go ahead and share those results. So not to my surprise, the most influential topic was the creation of smart labels. I'm not surprised because we squeezed a couple of ideas into there, but it's really an underutilized feature. Like I said, people are often creating fixed labels and maybe even changing that fixed field every time they print. So maybe it was the idea of just leveraging a when printed field or the database connection. But thank you for the feedback. And if you're one of the ones who answered, you're likely not alone there. And then second place being the wizards there. So I encourage you to take a look at some of our customer testimonials or our references here. This one was super exciting because it really speaks to exactly what we did here today. It's a company called Beantown Chemical. They're out of the East Coast, and with a combination of help from TechLinks and one of our value-added resellers, we helped them design pretty smart label templates that was leveraging a database connection to drive variable data, variable images, and data with data integrity checks to make their templates that much smarter. So you have the quote from them on the screen here about how they were pleased with our product and our services, but you can kind of read through the whole story here if you check on the chat window. So I'm not trying to talk too quick, but I did want to save a good amount of time for questions. So give me a quick second here to quickly breeze through them. So first question we have is, will this be recorded and emailed later? It absolutely will. So if you got a phone call halfway through or thought it was just so awesome that you wanted to share with the rest of your business, you can certainly do it. We will share it out. Here's a great question. Are we able to link to weight data from a scale? You absolutely are. That's a feature that is available within our CODESOFT product, and it's done by accessing the advanced variable and leveraging PortWatch or using a feature external to CODESOFT called Comet that is exclusive to COM ports. But we certainly support linking to scales. Also, scanners are really any input device, and we'll highlight that in our Print Better webinar. So I encourage you to attend that as well. Does the wizard also use compliant barcode height, or is this something you can change when creating the barcode? That's a great question. So by default, it'll default to a compliant height based on the GS1 specifications, and that's done via the GS1 norm setting within within the configuration there, though. So yes, we certainly try. Now, if you change your default barcode or default size, that will also be changed, but the standard settings out of the shelf do that. All right, the next one is, does CODESOFT include an HIBC barcode structure? It certainly does, and we have a wizard for it. That is one of the hardest barcodes to create, in my opinion, so the wizard is super useful there. It's just a less common barcode type, so I didn't highlight it, but it is there for you. So the color function, can you go with the Pantone color number? No, I think that is a wonderful idea, but the Pantone color number, I believe, does specify the CMYK color. So with a little bit of extra work, you will be able to do it, but we will certainly document that as an enhancement request for the future. What are the options to print labels from an Android device? That is an awesome question. So our TechLink Central product, which is an enterprise level label solution that allows you to publish a printing interface to a web, comes with an app to allow you to trigger printing from an iOS or an Android device as well. Will you be covering a webinar for Label Matrix 2019? So every month we do a basic and an advanced training on Label Matrix. As I had mentioned at the intro to the webinar, some of these features will apply to just CODESOFT and LabelView, but a flavor of them are all available within Label Matrix. I encourage you to check the training because they will teach you how to do a lot of what we did here today, as well as have a Q&A session at the end to go as deep as you'd like. Next question on the list is, can your software link to ERP software such as JD Edwards? And the answer to that is yes, yes, and more yes. We can do it in a variety of different ways, and we have quite a bit of experience with it. So sometimes it's really just leveraging the data within your ERP system to appear on the label, which you can do with a simple database connection. Other times our clients want to experience better printing by automating printing out of your ERP system, which is something you can do with a combination of our CODESOFT and our Sentinel product, which we will highlight in our Print Better webinar next week. Any insight how to add ISO symbols for medical devices to your labels? So we have some of them available in our library, but you can add all of those as images given you have the library, but we have some sample medical device libraries available within our product as well. And it is available in LabelView 2019. So I'm sorry, we have a lot of questions, so they're getting smaller as more of them come in. So we have one here. We use LabelView 2019. Is it possible to have background print black on white label stock? Yes. That is often a feature of the printer called reverse black and white objects. And if it's not, it's something that we can certainly help you design. So if you have any trouble with it, I suggest calling into our tech support group because they'll definitely nail that one to the wall. Can the database connection also update entered data back into a database? So yes, it absolutely can. It's not in the most straightforward fashion. You'd have to leverage a Visual Basic script, and often if the question is, can the database connection also update entered data back into the database, there's a better way to do it. So I'll have somebody from our sales and technical group circle back with you to have that discussion, because I have a feeling that question is just scratching the surface of how we can help you design and print better labels. All right, we have a question here. CODESOFT versus LabelView, what's the main difference? So The main difference between CODESOFT and LabelView is really on the topic of integration and automation. CODESOFT can do absolutely everything LabelView can do. It can also integrate with scales, scanners. It can print RFID tags. It can work with all of our enterprise level solutions as well. So I'd say that's really the main difference, but there is certainly a few other nuances too. We have a really great product comparison chart available on our website, and we're also working on making that better here in the near future. Can you change printers on the fly based on availability? You certainly can. We have some bidirectional communication built in with our printers, so it'll tell you if it's available or not at the time of print. We can also do some pretty clever stuff with making certain label templates load with the proper printers and whatnot. So that's something that we certainly have built into the product. All right. Do you also have any webinars on integration of CODESOFT and Sentinel? We will touch on that topic next week in the Print Better webinar. We'll cover it there. But typically when it comes to our enterprise products, if you really want to get down and dirty with it, I'd suggest just reaching out to us or letting us know in the survey, because we can do something a little more one-on-one, because we're really just going to scratch the surface next week on what print automation can do for you. Can a table lookup or database retrieve an image given a file path? It certainly can. I regret not showing that, but we're already 6 minutes over time, and I still have a couple more questions. We can certainly do that, and I should have demonstrated that for you, but that's something that's available in all of our products. And if you have any trouble doing it, please just call in our support group, and they'll help you do it. All right, and we have time for one more question. Will my forms or labels integrate with 2019? So our labels are always forward compatible, especially if you're staying current version to version. So with TechLinks, when you upgrade, you don't need to redesign your labels. They'll really just work with the new version of the label. So with that, I want to end by thanking you all one more time today. I do want to let you know that this is just the first of a 4-part webinar series. So for the next 4 weeks, I hope to be having you guys eat your lunch with me. We talk about printing labels better, securing labels better, or managing labels better. They're all at noon Central Time. So please join, and please let us know how we did on the survey, or let us know if you'd like to have additional follow-up. There were a few questions that we did not address live, so we will certainly be circling back with you on those questions. And here at TechLinks, we pride ourselves on our support. We do that in many different ways. A few to mention are answering all of our phone calls live, being diligent on our follow-up, and really helping you have a supported product. And it's all in our effort to have you barcode better and do it together with us. That is my direct contact information here. I would not mind hearing from absolutely anybody that attended today. And if you have an urgent need, feel free to contact our support line directly, as that's fully staffed. So if I get an influx of calls, I won't be able to take care of you all at the same time. But thanks again for joining. We appreciate the partnership and look forward to your attendance in the upcoming webinars over the next 3 weeks. Thanks again.